Okay, we'll give it another minute, but welcome everyone. Yeah, we'll just give it another minute. We find we get a few more attendees at 9:01, so we'll just give it a second. But yeah, thanks for joining us. Okay. All right. Look, I think we'll just kick off now. So welcome to a bit of a different webinar than what we've done probably previously with a number of the people on this call. There's a lot of familiar faces I can see already, and some new names. So welcome as well. But really excited about this session with Alexia Hilbertidou out of Auckland, New Zealand. I was lucky enough to meet Alexia late last year at a HRNZ conference, and was really just walked away from the discussion with Alexia. Probably learnt a lot more about a generation that I really hadn't had a huge amount of understanding of, even though my daughter, I think, is just before Gen Z. But really just took a lot away from it, and then applied a lot of the learnings from what Alexia shared in her presentation, which I saw, as well as just a conversation after, and how the connection into the skills that we teach as part of the programs of crucial learning, in particular crucial conversations, which led Alexia to come and join the program, Crucial Conversations. And then we had this idea of how do we put a lens on Gen Z in the workplace in particular, and also how we're able to kind of translate the skills from Crucial Conversations and how that can support leaders within the workforce. Deal with multi-generational workforces. We all know there's 5 generations working in a workforce at this point, but how can we improve those relationships? How can we build performance? How do we connect better with Gen Z? And I don't think there's been probably a presentation or a conference I've been to recently that doesn't touched on Gen Z workforce and that changing dynamics. So within workplaces. So really happy to have Alexia with us today. For those that don't know about Crucial Dimensions, just very briefly, who are new to it, we're the exclusive licensee for Crucial Learning training programs out of the US. We've had that, we've been utilizing that license for over 15 years now. So work with a lot of different industries, different organizations. The training from there it's evidence-based training, and really helps build those crucial capabilities and behaviors in organizations that really have an impact on performance, organizationally and personally within people. So really pleased to kind of share that with you today. Have Alexia here. Just for the purpose of those that may, and probably to not embarrass Alexia too much, but I just thought I'd just read a brief bio so you get to know a little bit about Alexia. So described by New Zealand Herald as the head mistress of Gen Z, Alexia is the founder of GirlBoss New Zealand. So that's New Zealand's largest organisation for young women. And she founded that when she was 16. And GirlBoss now has 17,500 members, which is incredible. And I learnt a lot about that just over our conversations as well. Alexia has received over 30 awards for her work, including being named Pacific Young Entrepreneur of the Year, finalist for 2025 Young New Zealander of the Year, the most influential New Zealand woman under 25 at the Westpac Women of Influence Award, Forbes 30 under 30. She's a National Geographic Explorer and the finalist for Young World Young Entrepreneur of the Year. I feel very insignificant right now just reading that. Alexia was also awarded a Queen's Young Leader Award for services to the Commonwealth by Her Majesty, the Queen, at Buckingham Palace. We all get to sit outside and look at the guards. She went inside. She was selected from over 20,000 nominations and is the youngest Commonwealth citizen to hold this honour. Amazing stories. I heard some of them in person with her, but she really does prove that you are never too young or too short, as she puts it, to create change. So with that, I'm going to throw over to Alexia. What I would ask is that we're going to do Q&A at the end, and please, we've got plenty of time for it. So have your questions. Use the chat. If you can't remember your question or you don't want to lose it, put it in the chat. Engage with the group. We'll be watching that as we go. And yeah, this will be a very practical, funny, but also really insightful session that I'm sure hopefully everyone will get a lot out of. So over to you, Alexia.
Thank you, Josh. It is fantastic to be with you all today. I'm so excited to be speaking to you all. Please, we really want to use the chat function throughout this webinar. So let's test it out. If you could drop in the chat right now where you are tuning in from today, what city, and you can say hi, you can say hello, you can say what's up, or in any other language you want, let us know where you're tuning in from. Oh, we've got Sydney, we've got Brisbane, we've got Perth, we've got Christchurch. That is good to see. GC, we got lots of awesome different places today. The beautiful blue mountains outside of Sydney. Well, Tara, you are definitely selling that one there. And great to see some familiar faces. Great to see you, Brad. And if you haven't already, still time to chuck down where you are tuning in from today because I am so grateful for everyone for tuning in. Now, where I was beginning on where to start the story of my journey and then my insights into Generation Z today, I thought I would begin with the number one most asked question about me. And the number one most asked question about me is, in fact, about my parents. So I've got a bit of a funny story, and I think it also shows a little bit of a generational difference here. So I go to, in my role, a lot of fancy events, award ceremonies, lots of sort of functions and galas. That's when you're in the sort of charity space, you spend a lot of time at these sort of events. And I often take my mum, I'm Generation Z myself, but I take my mum along as my plus one. Now, after a few drinks and a few wines, my mum will begin telling the story of how my mum and dad met. And she will tell this poor diplomat that's sitting next to us when they haven't asked, I met Alexia's dad at a gay nightclub in Mykonos. So neither of these men in these photos, in this photo, is my father. This is me just researching my ancestry and where I came from. So my mum, she was a classic Gen Y. She was a young backpacker on her very first OE. She met my dad, who was the bouncer at a gay nightclub in Mykonos. And then 9 months later, I was the souvenir from my mum's very first OE. Now, this may be a story that some of you may be familiar with bringing home a souvenir, a little bit more exciting than a keychain. And if I reflect back on some of my early experiences of my childhood, my mum had me as a young Samoan mum, and she had lots of life experience, but her pockets were very devoid of cash. And she taught me many things, mainly what not to do, but she also taught me a key lesson, and that was a man is not a financial plan. So from that young age, I remember seeing my mum make the decision to go to university, the first in her family to do so, whilst having me as a young child. And I learned very early the importance of education. And I'm so passionate about education because I knew that education would be the tool that would lift me and my family out of poverty. And in fact, just the other day, I was going through old files on my computer and I found my homework assignment at 8 years old. And my homework assignment was create a CV. Now, do we have anybody in the chat that hires people, or perhaps you manage people, or you have staff underneath you, or you've got a team underneath you? Could you let me just say, I do in the comments below, just so we can see if anyone here manages staff. Oh, great. We've got lots of people who do. Perfect. Okay. Well, because you may look at your fair share of CVs, I'm going to let you be the judge of 8-year-old me's real CV. This is a real deal, and it's coming on the screen now. So here it is, my CV at age 8 years old. It gives a little bit of a snapshot into a Gen Z childhood. And in that red circle, my hobbies at 8 years old were I love the computer and I like making PowerPoints. It's great. I now speak to up to 100 high schools a year, and that involves making a lot of PowerPoints. I even got to make a PowerPoint for today, so I am living the childhood dream. But from a young age, I was really passionate about technology, and I used to spend my days in the computer lab in primary school coding and working on tech. But what I found is as I started to get older, my passion for technology made me feel rather isolated. And I felt a bit like the odd one out. In year 12, I was the only girl in my school's digital technology class, and later in year 13, I was the only girl in my advanced physics class. And I'll go to coding competitions and science competitions and regularly be one of 2, 3 young women in the room. And I just couldn't understand when my female friends were so intelligent and so capable, but didn't have the confidence to step into these fields. And I thought someone should do something about it. So at 16, I started GirlBoss New Zealand, an organization to empower young women into STEM leadership and business. We now have members not just in New Zealand and actually in 27 countries under our sister organization, Changemaker. But here in New Zealand, that is definitely where we are New Zealand's largest organisation for young people. We have 17,500 members currently enrolled, which works out roughly 1 in 7 of all high school age students in New Zealand. And we have members from over 400 schools. So pretty cool to go from a place where I felt like such a loner to now working full time with thousands of young women each and every year. And it's taken me to places I never could have imagined when I was that 16-year-old sitting alone in that classroom. Like right here, where I met this woman that some of you may recognize. So if you recognize her, you can let me know in the comments if you do. But that was fantastic, where I received the Queen's Young Leaders Award for services to the Commonwealth. And I received that award at 19, and I'm currently still the youngest Commonwealth citizen to hold this honour, which is pretty humbling. Now, fam, when I was reflecting on what value I can give to such an awesome, good-looking audience, now I can't actually see you, but I can just tell we've got a really good-looking audience through those webcams. And I thought I could give a bit of insight into Generation Z. GirlBoss has been able to grow so quickly in such a short amount of time to be New Zealand's largest organisation for Gen Z, with no marketing budget, no fancy tricks, no fancy board, no fancy CEO, just through understanding Generation Z mindset. So today we're going to crack that Gen Z mindset. You're all going to leave this webinar feeling down with the kids. So you're going to know how to have conversations with your next generation of consumers and also the Gen Z talent that are creeping up your organization as we speak. Now, because Generation Z's attention span is measured in seconds, not minutes, we're going to make it a game. And we're going to make it a game similar in style to a game you may have heard of before. And this game is called Tinder. Now, can let me know in the comments if you've heard of Tinder before. Say, I know Tinder in the comments below. Who knows Tinder? Anyone here knows Tinder before? Yes, Tanya wants to let us know that she's heard of Tinder. Anyone else heard of this great game? Yes, Maddie's heard of it. Bianca's heard of it. Let us know. There is no shame, no judgment in the Zoom room today. Brad's heard of it. If you want to be extra brave, you can tell us you're on Tinder. Francesca's met her partner on Tinder. That is a great success story, Francesca. I'm not sure I can promise you'll meet the love of your life in this webinar today, but we will be inspired by Francesca using Tinder today. Now, if you're not familiar with Tinder, the premise is pretty simple. Swipe right equals yeah, swipe left equals nah. So we're going to show some traits of Gen Z. You're going to say in the comments what you think the answer is, and then you've officially won Gen Z Tinder. Now, fun fact, swipe right is now used in Gen Z slang today. So the next time someone in your life asks you, how was that burger? You can just reply, swipe right. I can guarantee that people will think you are very cool and the young people in your life will not be embarrassed at all. Okay, team, without further ado, we're going to do our first round. Does Generation Z want to be the side character or the main character? So if you think Gen Z want to be side character, you're going to type swipe left. And if you think they want to be the main character, you're going to write swipe right. And we want every single vote. We've got 44 people on there. So that means everyone can have a guess. And you know what? I'll even let you have 2 guesses to double your chances of winning. Okay, everyone, going to have 3 more seconds to write in that chat box. I want to see every single name what you think it is. Final chance. If you're on the fence about stepping up and contributing to this webinar and putting your thoughts down, this is your moment. Okay. It seems the consensus is pretty clear, and the correct answer is swipe right. So if you said swipe right, give yourself a pat on the back. Even if we can't see you, you can give yourself a little pat on the shoulder. You can pat the cat sitting next to you because that is the correct answer. For Generation Z, they love to be the main character. We only need to look at our heroes throughout history to see this phenomenon and why it occurs. So let's look at the $1,000,000 question when it comes to main character Gen Z. In Deloitte's 2024 Gen Z survey, these were the top 4 qualities Gen Z seeks in an employer. Which ranked number 1? Now, this one is actually particularly difficult because all 4 were the top traits. So it's not like anyone isn't valued by Gen Z. We're just hunting out number 1. Okay, we've got some very varied answers here. Right there, we can see, and I well done to everyone who guessed A and B. It's so close. I actually almost count both answers as the correct answer. We see that number A is work-life balance, number B, learning and development opportunities. So we can see there that Gen Z want the world to fit around them and they want to have the opportunities to advance. Okay, where does this phenomenon come from? For us to understand it, we need to know the why. So in the 70s, it was all sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Do we have any 70s babies in the Zoom room today? Please give a yeah or a whoop. Yep, Nicole's given us a yep. Give us a yeah. Yeah, says Rob. I love that, Rob. A bit of enthusiasm there. Let us know if you are a 70s baby. Now, in the 70s, we had the Rolling Stones. You had the same music. We were brought together by a love of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. This is a badass generation, the 70s. Look out for them. Then we had 80s. Do we have any 80s babies in the room today? Can we give a whoop whoop? Yeah, Tanya's giving us a whoop. Yes, a 80s babies, says Bianca. Well done, Bianca, for that enthusiasm. So let us know in the comments if you're an 80s baby. Now, that was the time of glamour, of grit, of cross-dressing. You were brought together by your love of Madonna and Prince, right? Okay, this was my mum's generation. Then we had the 90s. Rap, profanity. Do we have any 90s babies in the room? Give us a yeah, give us a yo, what's up? If there's any 90s babies in the room. Yes, Tegan, Francesca, I should have known that considering you met your partner on Tinder. Absolutely. Yes, says Michelle. Now, if you walked in to any of those 90s teens' bedrooms, you would have seen on the wall posters of Tupac, posters of Biggie. You would have seen those matching posters, no matter where you were in the world, those same posters on the wall. Okay, what do we see for Generation Z? Who are their heroes? Gone are the days of only Channel 1 and Channel 2 and Channel 3. I actually don't really remember if these days existed. Can anyone let me know in the comments if there really was a time where you only had Channel 1 or Channel 2? My mum's told me this was a thing. I actually don't remember it. That was a little bit before my time. Michael says only 5 TV channels. If anyone else was around, in Australia, we had 5 up until 1988. Well, that was before my time. In 1970s Auckland, only 1 channel. 5 channels. Wow. Everyone here, make sure you read this chat. It's really fascinating. There was a time where we were all consuming the same media. And what that meant was we all had to wait our turn for the Friends show to come on. We had to all watch one out of 5 or 3 or 2 or 1 channels. Now we have gone from 5 channels to billion channels. Every single one of us, if we were in this Zoom room right now, were to hold up this phone here, right here, and we were to compare our algorithm, not one of us would have one that matched anyone else's. Every single one of us have got a personalized channel. This has led to a massive rise in polarization and a massive rise in personalization. So, polarization, personalization, 2 very key traits of Generation Z. We're not being fed the same media. We are all on our own individual channels. Now, this is a metaphor for what has led into every areas of our lives. We don't want just channel 1 and channel 2. We want to go on Netflix and stop, pause, repeat, and binge watch when and where we like. And this has created a phenomenon that some generational researchers refer to as the Netflix effect, the deep desire for personalization and this feeling that you need to know me. You need to know me. You need to know what I want, and you need to fit around me. Now, this is very, I'm talking about it in the context of Gen Z, but I want to give you that reassurance that if we get it right for Gen Z, we get it right for everyone. Because even you don't want to just watch one channel anymore. You want it personalized and you want to know it for you. That makes it very hard for us as we're having conversations with Gen Z. How do we make it personalized? Now, Crucial Convos uses the idea of mutual purpose, which is an awesome phrase, and I know Josh will jump into that later, but it's around that idea that you need to personalize it and find their own purpose in each conversation. Okay, realistic or idealistic? What do you think? Swipe left, realistic, swipe right, idealistic? Get your votes in, fam. Ooh, we're a little bit more 50-50 here. We've got some rights, we've got some lefts. Okay, now I did deliberately word this in a way to make this a bit challenging because I didn't want you just to get every answer right straight off the bat. So the correct answer for this is swipe left. Gen Z are a lot more realistic than their millennial counterparts. This is one of the key differences between Gen Z and millennial generation. Now, if I wanted to make it easier for you for guessing, you could even use the term glass half empty. Okay, if we as idealistics, having your glass half full, Gen Z, to sum it up, are a bit of a miserable bunch. Now, we can say that in the safety of the Zoom chat and because I'm part of Gen Z, but they are a little bit miserable. They have lost faith in traditional forms of operation and education. Millennials believed everyone can win. Gen Z believe only the best can win, and they must struggle and they must strive, and the world will not work out well for them. They've grown up in a time of such great disruption. They know that a university degree holds no guarantees. If they want to get their business education, they're not going to go do a 4-year business degree necessarily. They're going to be like 9-year-old Eli that lives across the road from me. He actually does live across the road from me. And he is getting his business education by interviewing business leaders on his very own podcast. Now, I love this quote by Eli. Look how cool he looks here. I'm big about money. I like to create ideas. I like to be in charge and help other people. Imagine being that cool at 9. That is a snapshot into Gen Z mindset, that quote there. Gen Z has been raised on a diet of compete and achieve messaging. New Zealand's Got Talent, Survivor, X Factor. I'm sure you've got Australia's Got Talent, your own versions of different ones there. Not even our love lives are free from competition. Now, I would love nothing more than to follow in the footsteps of the generations that came before me and spend years at university drinking, partying, and wasting my 20s on long, elaborate OEs which have got funny patches in them because I can barely remember them. But frankly, I'm too bloody scared. That is the feeling of Generation Z today. They're so scared, they've stopped drinking. Now, this is in New Zealand, but the stats are the same in Australia, and it's a global phenomenon, and you can see that by just walking into your store, your supermarket, and seeing how much more alcohol-free options or mocktail options are at your local bar. Look at this. Isn't this fascinating? We see nearly half of all Gen Z have not consumed a full glass of alcohol in the past year. Can you say the same for your generation? They've stopped drinking. They've even stopped having sex. Generation Z have truly gone mild. Or as my mum likes to refer to us, we're the fun police. We're so scared that we're the first generation that would rather stay home and watch Netflix with mummy than go out to a party. This leads us to the next $1,000,000 question. So if you get this question right, you may get £1,000,000. We're on the final of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Everyone, lock in your answer. Now, Josh has told me that he will give £1,000,000 to everyone who gets this right, eh, Josh? Don't chase me up for it, chase up him. Okay, it's looking like your lucky day, people, because the correct answer is fear. Generation Z are absolutely riddled with fear. If you look at a lot of the messaging underneath is just scared generation. If I was to sum up a Generation Z mindset and I was to jump inside their mind, it would just be them screaming like this, That would be the insight into a Generation Z mind. They're so scared and so full of fear. And when I look at all the different factors that make this up, I believe it's definitely strongly to do with the polarization of social media algorithms. But we only need to look at some of the headlines that are facing Generation Z. So if I look at my most difficult time as a people leader, it was actually in the middle of the COVID-19 lockdowns. Now, to jump you back into what the headlines were at the time, these were some of the screenshots. Now, that lockdown kids one is from Australia, so I know that it was a phenomenon across the ditch. How to break a generation. Ghosts in the system. I would go to Zoom meetings with principals and other education leaders, and then I'd look at, they'll be on the front page of the newspaper criticizing the government, saying, our children will never recover from this. Now think about that for a second. A people leader, a school principal, going on the front page of the newspaper and saying, we will never recover from this. Our young people are being sacrificial lambs, the education centers, they won't recover. This is the end for them. Now, one might think, is it in saying this is the biggest travesty in history to date? Now, it's interesting because we've had leaders who have led people through wars who say, keep calm and carry on. Then we had that now we're leading them through a lockdown. They're saying this generation is broken forever. In Crucial Conversations, we learn a lot about the power of stories we tell it ourselves. And they found that stories tend to fit into three unhelpful categories. A victim story, poor me, no generation's had it as hard as I have. A villain story, they're so awful, that they're attacking me. And then what can be the most painful story to carry, a helpless story. There's nothing I can do. All hope has been lost. Everything is, the fight is over. We might as well go home and cry to mum. But what we learnt in Crucial Conversations is to acknowledge when those stories pop up and then ask ourselves, what else can be true? Is it possible that maybe our children aren't fully broken? Is it possible that you could actually find a positive within a situation like this? Now, not always appropriate. I understand that people had various challenges, but is it possible? Is it something to consider? I remember we were really impacted. We had thousands of young women going through in-person programs before our lockdowns. Then we created a virtual GirlBoss school for the lockdowns, which was absolutely amazing. And it was the largest government-funded employment readiness program during the COVID lockdowns. And we had thousands of young women who didn't turn up to their Zoom classes in their normal school get sent to GirlBoss school. So if you weren't going to your Zoom classes because you were a bit slack, then the Ministry of Education who funded this would say, well, you can go to GirlBoss school instead. Now, we hosted 50 webinars. We had thousands of corporate mentors mentor these young women. And every single day when these girls would log into GirlBoss school, I would say, yay, you are so lucky to be here and part of the GirlBoss community. We're going to give you the GirlBoss edge. You are the luckiest generation because you've got access to something that no one else has ever had access to before. No one else has ever got mentors in the middle of school time. You are the luckiest generation. We're so grateful. We're going to emerge from this stronger than ever, and no one's going to be able to compete with us. Now, they did research on our alumni Ministry of Education here. Every single metric drastically improved. They left more confident. they left more connected, they had career direction, they had lots of friends. We were doing social events all the time. They were having a blast, virtual social events. Parents were emailing me say, I can barely recognize my child. They're bouncing off the wall with excitement each and every day. And the only difference, I don't think we did anything fancy, really. The only difference is every day when you would log into GirlBoss School, I'd say, aren't we great to be here? And everyone in the comments would go absolutely nuts with excitement. And I'd say, give some congratulations, give some joy in the chat. That is the power of a conversation shift. And when people are full of fear, we must be in the hope business and we must cut through that fear with hope. Okay, spendy or savey? Everybody drop your guess in the comments below for Generation Z. Swipe left for spendy, swipe right for savey. Yay! Oh my gosh, I can see that because I kind of had that tricky last question, everyone's now half left, half right, not sure what to put down. And I also worded the question in a little bit of a challenging way. So the correct answer is swipe right. For Generation Z, money talks. You could not find a more money obsessed generation. This generation loves cash. We see that this generation are having the highest rates of using investing software and investing in the share markets, investing into crypto, starting their own business. Look at this. 66% of Gen Z value financial security over doing something they love. That is an inverse of the millennial generation and also taps into Gen Z's mindset that they must punish themselves and focus on the cash. Where does this come from? They grew up in the aftermath of the 2008 global financial crisis, and their parents taught them the importance of money. And they saw the consequences from their parents' decisions or lack of decisions. Look at this, fam. 58% want to start their own business. 76% want to lead others. That's a fun challenge for all of you who manage Gen Z. 76% want to lead others. 45% have a side hustle. Now, I'm going to be real with you. When I saw this one, 45% have a side hustle, I thought, I don't quite believe it. That seems a bit high. But then I went through my friends. One person has an eyelash business. One person has a nails business. One person does Uber driving. One person does tutoring. Actually, I thought 45% could have a side hustle. Number one factor in choosing a job, we're seeing coming through very strongly, good salary. This leads us to the $1,000,000 question when it comes to engaging Generation Z as talent. I call this the $1,000,000 question because if you nail this question, you are pretty much set in creating a good culture for your Generation Z staff. In what ways do you authentically value the entrepreneurial ideas in your organization? If someone has an innovative idea, do you provide avenues to help them execute on it? If the direct manager rejects it, is it lost? Gen Z want to be entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs. If you don't use their talent, you'll lose that entrepreneurial talent. Okay, fam, here's a snapshot of what's hot and what's not in Generation Z today. I'll give you a few seconds to look at this now. If you want to take some notes of the dance moves of the dancing rabbit, you are welcome to do that too. Moving on. Now I feel grateful to be part of Generation Z and to be in a generation where a young woman raised below the poverty line can work at NASA, at the United Nations, and even meet this guy, Jamie Oliver. Now, let me know in the comments if you know who Jamie Oliver is. Say, I do in the comments if you know Jamie Oliver. Yep. Okay, good. You know Jamie Oliver. Perfect. So he's a celebrity chef and owner of a $500 million cooking empire. And he is the single most charismatic person I've ever met in my life and the greatest people leader I've seen in action. He likes to mentor young leaders. So when I was studying in the UK, I got selected to be personally mentored by Jamie Oliver. And he shared with me a piece of advice that was so inspiring that inspires me each and every day. And I want to share that with you now. So he started off by sharing his own story. He said, Alexia, when I was 25 and made the decision to start my very first restaurant, the criteria for who could work at my restaurant was 1, be homeless, 2, have drug and alcohol problems, or 3, just left prison. A bit of a different job criteria than usual. When he shared this with the people around him, they thought he was absolutely nuts. Jamie's own father didn't speak to him for a year as he thought he was throwing away his life to give a hand up to others. But Jamie's decision to do something different propelled him and his restaurant into global fame. Once people heard about the mission, it completely changed the restaurant and people were waiting months in advance to get a table. This was the decision that completely changed Jamie's life forever. And then he shared this story with me and then he said, Alexia, when you walk into a boardroom, when you walk into a meeting, who is the person that holds the most power? The one with the most hope. Be the one with hope. Be the one with vision. Be the one with optimism. And I think so often, in a world full of fear, we are afraid to stand up and be hopeful and visionary. But Jamie showed that that is the person that holds the most power in a room. And when I reflect on my story, one thing is clear. The opportunities that have happened for me became possible not because I was the smartest person in the room or the most popular or because I followed the advice of Dr. Phil, but in fact because I was never afraid to take the uncommon path. When I told my mum at 16 that I wanted to start my very own social enterprise, she replied, why don't you go get a normal job and then you can just donate to charity? But I chose to ignore that very sensible advice, spurred by the belief that if you want opportunities that not many people get, you need to make choices that not many people make. You need to make the choice to be the most hopeful person in the room. You need to make the choice to cut through fear with hope. And as for my mum, she now works full-time for me. So I got a bit of the last laugh there. So a big thank you to everyone for listening. I'm so grateful. And please, I know that I can't see you all visually, but please chuck me a follow on LinkedIn and I'd love to connect with you all individually as well. So thank you all so much. You have officially graduated from Gen Z Tinder School today. Now I've got a few questions as well, but I'd love to hear your questions. Thank you, Maddie.
Yeah, just throw the questions in the chat, folks. We've got Alexia's time for the next period. So yeah, please just put it in there and we'll be happy to answer them. Give
Yes,
it a few
everyone put in
minutes.
your questions, and there's no such thing as a dumb question because I'll tell you what my number one most common question is. And I know this question is coming because I'll be at a school and a young girl will throw her hand up really fast and she'll ask my number one most asked question. And that will be, what did the Queen smell like? That is the number one most asked question I get. So if you think you've got a question that feels a bit dumb, there's no such thing because I get all the questions going around different schools. Now, maybe while we're
Alex,
waiting for those.
oh, Lexi, I was going to ask you just in terms of you work, obviously you work in the school environments, you also work within organizations as
Mm,
well, and you
mhm.
consult and other things. And I'll grab to Diane shortly, but what are leaders, you work with senior leaders within quite large organizations. What are they coming to you about in terms of this really emerging generation that are going to be in management roles in the next, 2 or 3 years if they're not already in them? But there's this, I've seen the stats in that space. What are they coming to you with about their concerns or opportunities or way to lead within their organizations?
Yeah, so you yeah, thank you, Josh. So the biggest there's a number of things. So we do a lot of Gen Z consulting. We run a lot of early talent strategies for a number of organizations here in New Zealand, internship programs, apprenticeship programs. You know it, we've probably done it. Uh, if I was to say the biggest mistake I see leaders of Gen Z make is being scared of their own staff. How that shows up, I'll give you an example. Uh, in New Zealand, we had a period of time where we had a lot of flooding in Auckland. Thankfully, I think not many people were harmed, but a lot of houses were lost, and it was a pretty sad time. But it was still it was in parts of Auckland. And during that time, there was a lot of leaders were coming out and supporting their staff, which was incredible. Now, I had a meeting with one of New Zealand's top CEOs, and we were chatting about how he was feeling with his staff. And he was saying to me, look, my Gen Z, they're the most negative bunch. This is a massive New Zealand company, by the way, like upwards of 5,000 staff. Um, they're a negative bunch. Everyone's so down. Everyone's moping around the office, like having this is what he was telling me. And he said, and I do these newsletters from the leaders from the CEO to my thousands of staff. And I said, well, how are you doing? Like, how is the business doing? And he said, well, actually, the business has never been doing better. We've got money dripping off the walls, business is booming, things are great in this particular industry. And I said, have you communicated that to your staff? And he actually paused and he said, well, no, I haven't. If I look at my last, newsletter letters from the CEOs to my staff, it's all been, hope everyone's okay, hope everyone's all right. And it's been like that. And he even mentioned COVID. I said COVID was a long time ago. We don't need to be still going on about COVID. Let's be real. And still, we're trapped in this feeling. And he said, I feel I can't be positive. I can't be hopeful because it will seem dismissive of people's problems. Then I said, well, you've been trying it, this negative approach for a long time now. Everyone's super negative. So I don't think if your goal was to spread positivity, it's not working. So in his next one, he changed it and he said, he added in some of the wins of the business and said, we're doing really great, congratulations. And he got replies from lots of people in his organization saying that was really refreshing and really positive. And I often refer to the narrative that is used in war times a lot, but that's a really powerful example where even in some of the hardest times, you don't need to buy into negativity and as a people leader. Now, negativity is quite a strong word. I should be careful saying that. What I'm saying is our responsibility as leaders is to uplift with hope and to be positive, to hold space for that emotion, but also not feel that we need to stay in that soup forever. So I think getting that balance right is really important. For some people, they may be too far on one lens. It depends, but I think the most common mistake is feeling that you're so scared of being cancelled by your Gen Z staff that you can't lead with hope or direction. Oh, you're just on mute there, Josh.
So there's a question there from Mike. So thank you for that, Alexia. That's really good. I'm burdened by the entitlement and lack of humility from this generational group. I'm Gen X, and I always was taught to respect elders and be humble, but this younger group don't seem to have been taught that. Just interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, Michael, I hear ya. It's not, it's not always easy working with Generation Z. I feel that too, working with thousands of Generation Z each and every day. Uh, do I think, I'm not, I hear ya. What's the question here? My thoughts on it. Um, I think my strategy and I think what Crucial Conversations teaches is that trying to find ways to bond and to connect and trying to shift that mindset a little bit. Because you're going, if we're going, Generation Z are really entitled, and they're going, Gen X, they don't understand us, we need to cancel them. Then we just got this sort of fear-driven, polarized smuck, which we want to sort of cut through that and focus on building relationships and connection. One strategy that I learned through the 2-day course with Brad, who's actually in the chat now, is the importance of establishing trust and respect in all of your conversations. So that's something that I would really take on board. One of the ones that was one of my favorite examples I learned at Crucial Conversations was we had to watch a video of a meeting between a senior leader and like a Gen Z talent, and we had to watch what was happening and then we had to give our feedback on it. So what was happening was the younger person was trying to pitch a project idea to the senior leader. And what the young person kept doing is they kept trying to establish expertise by saying, this is the best way, and I know this. And they kept trying to establish expertise with this leader to get their project over the line. But what they didn't realize was the reason they couldn't convince their idea to go through was because they hadn't built trust and respect. Now, it seems a bit weird because you'd think, why does a junior leader need to show the senior leader that they trust and respect them? Surely they don't need to prove to a senior leader they trust and respect them. They're the big dog. They've already got the respect. But what you need to do, and what we learn, is you need to sometimes be so clear with trust and respect. What I learned, if I was to sum up Crucial Conversations, you have to say all the things that youth would think is just pretty obvious. So you have to say, look, I really respect your thoughts on this. Your thoughts are really important to me. Hey, we're both on the same page here. Hey, this is our mutual goal. You almost have to state things out really quite obviously, but it's amazing. Once you start doing it, you can't assume. You think, oh, look, of course we're all on the same page. I don't need to waste my words saying that, but it actually makes a huge difference in how your conversations flow. Now, this is me giving my version of this. Josh, I'm sure, knows it on a much more intelligent level. But if I was to sum it up for dummies, that would be my biggest takeaway from Crucial Conversations. And I think that cuts through with the entitlement thing. Perhaps you think they don't respect you, but in fact, maybe they think by showing the expertise, that's going to create that culture. So if you say to them, I respect you, then they may need to not try and peacock any longer. Josh, what's your thoughts on that?
Um, yeah, I think that's well said. I could spend ages on that because that's the program, but that's in essence what Crucial Conversations and why we connected on this,
Mm,
Alexia, is it creates a common language. It provides a framework that enables you to get to that mutual purpose, find
mm,
an action where everyone is on the same page. And um, I've applied that. I teach a lot of football with Gen Z and other things, and I use the skills every single day
yeah,
in how you, and it's not just you having a crucial conversation. It just can be in the way you communicate, just generally, and it's really kind of I think our conversations, Alexia, and how I've looked at Gen Z and how I then approach it from a communication is subtly changing, which is cool.
yeah.
So.
'Cause I think it's
Um,
honestly because we're so humble. We don't think, like, we think as people leaders, we don't need to say, oh, I'm really proud of you. You've done a fantastic job.
no.
We think, oh, well, we don't, it's not our opinion. It's not that important. We're not, why would they care that we say that to them? So we
Yeah.
think it's not necessary, but we learn in Christian conversations, you actually do need to say that. 10 times more than you're probably already
Yeah.
saying it.
Yeah. And that's where you get the common language. You
Mm,
get a safety that's created and you get confidence on both sides because I only had a conversation with a client or a prospect last week and they didn't touch on Gen Z, but they're just talking about generational differences. And they'd mentioned around we have a massive avoidance and silence culture here. And I said, okay, yep,
mm,
I hear that pretty much every day. Explain it to me. And they said, our leaders are basically unable to have accountability conversations or create an accountability environment.
mm,
So what they go to is they go to silence. They then take on the work. They then get resentful. They then start to get frustrated, and it plays out in other parts of the business without actually addressing the issue that's right at hand. And they said this is cycle and it goes on. They said it's actually just part of our culture now. And I said, well, I fundamentally don't agree with that because behaviors change. Once behaviors start to change through building the right skills and capability, then performance changes. So we talk that through, but it's very, very consistent on that front. So we've kind of gone off a little bit from yours, Michael, but hopefully it helps. I think you've asked a few other questions there too. Just a quick one from Bianca. So, how do Gen Z people generally perceive millennials? Is there a surefire way for a millennial to earn a Gen Zer's respect?
play Chapel Roan.
Oh, Chapel Pink Pony.
Yeah.
That's right.
Show you're down with the kids by playing Chapel Roan. That's the biggest star. Taylor Swift is the millennial hero. That's the Gen Z hero. Sabrina Carpenter, maybe. I'm. I appreciate the question, Bianca, a bit tongue in cheek. A surefire way for a millennial to earn a Gen Z's respect. I think that's probably as close as you would get for a surefire way. But I think most importantly, building that connection and that relationship, particularly making an effort to really get to know them on a human level,
Yeah.
and remembering those key principles. Every time you go into a conversation with that someone, you need to ask yourself, have I proven that I trust them? And or how quickly can I make it so that there's lots of trust here? And how quickly can I show that I respect them? And that is really the secret sauce. And
Mm.
so that
Yeah.
might be as simple as saying, oh, I'd really love to get your thoughts on this, or oh, Jenny here's a real star in this area, or you know, building that trust, asking personal, asking questions about their weekend. It's a bit cliche. We consider it boring chat that needs to be removed from society because everything, we should just all be on Zoom calls these days and we don't need to have water chats. But those chats were important in building trust. And so it's really important that we are making an effort to build trust, and having conversations about what you had for dinner last night is one way, not you can build trust that can be lost if you're in a fully virtual environment as well.
Mm. Yeah. Tanya's question there was what type of digital content, e.g., student testimonials, behind the scenes, short videos, did Gen Z typically respond to best?
Yeah, if we look at, thank you, Tanya, that's a great question. If we look at the research, people tend to like, most likely relate to real people. So that's things like, testimonials from real people, real quotes. Actually, endorsements from somebody like them is more powerful than endorsements from celebrities we're seeing. So people trust and respect those opinions of people like them. So I saw you save some great examples there. To be honest, all the examples there, Tanya, you're pretty on the eight ball. Testimonials, behind the scenes, that helps build that relatability, that personalized, personal connection. Short videos, don't.
Yeah.
Tanya's on it. Tanya's given the answers in her question. One thing I would say for something a bit different that we use at GirlBoss, which is highly effective and not many people do, text. SMS texting. Think about this. How many social media ads do you see a day? I don't know, probably upwards of 100. How many emails do you get in your inbox a day? Probably 60. How many texts do you get in a day? For Gen Z especially, they don't have a phone bill coming through. Very, very little. So we found when we use SMS texting to reach our young people, we were going from, we would send them when they get accepted into a program via email. It would take 3 days on average to get all of them to do the next step. Through texting, went down to 4 hours. Gen Z believe that if they get a text, they need to act on it straight away. So that is one little secret nugget that we do at GirlBoss that very few youth organizations do, that I think is quite our secret sauce. So I'll give that to you, Tanya.
Cool. Just
Thank
one here from Francesca. Really enjoyed the insights. How can an employer help a Gen Zer overcome fear to fulfill the needs of their role?
Great,
It's a
great
big
question.
question.
Yeah, great
Mm,
question, Francesca, and actually sums up what we're trying to achieve.
yeah.
That is the problem we're trying to say. We need to help them overcome their feelings of fear. Sometimes it's as simple as a mindset shift. I tell my team at GirlBoss, we are in the hope business. Our job is to turn up and to deliver hope. Now, obviously, we work with youth, and so that's a bit more centered to our mission. But I do think even that framing, where you can actually see when a Gen Z is coming to you and they're, falling apart, if you can even just identify, they're actually, sometimes they can even be attacking you. They can, right? They can actually be attacking you. And if you can almost see it from the lens of, wow, this is like a little frightened dog who's barking at you from a corner. And they're saying this culture of this organization, da 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 da, da, you don't care, da da da, da. You don't care about mental health or whatever they're saying. If you can even just see, wow, this is someone that's really frightened, and just do that mental shift, then it allows you to lead with heart, lead with compassion, and lead with empathy and go from that lens. Now, that would be a more general, I'm not sure for that specific context that you're referring to, but even just having that ability to identify where that emotion's coming from allows you to be more empathetic and to lead with a bit of heart and a bit of compassion.
Yeah. All right, we've got a few people jumping off
Thanks,
now, so
Michael.
we're going to wrap things up. Alexia, thank you so much. I was lucky enough to get an hour of us discussing this in Auckland, which was amazing, and why we came to this point. But look, Alexia's details are there. This is really just why we wanted to run this was just to really apply a different lens to the work that we do. And Alexia and I talked about this a lot. So we do a lot of course previews. We do a lot of getting people that are really talking about our programs over and over and over. And we get that, and people enjoy that. But for us is to put another lens on these things. So really, thank you for the time, Alexia. Hopefully, everyone got some really good insights from it. We'll send out an email post this, which will have the recording. We'll have also some events that we're running in Perth, Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne, which will, I think, if you're an OD, L&D, people and culture leader, come along after work, have a drink. There might be some Gen Zers there, probably not. We'll see. But you'll learn more about the work we're doing and how it connects to a lot of the things that have been brought up in the chat. So I really encourage that. But that'll all be in the email. Thank you again, Alexia. As always, get so much from when we talk, and that we had the opportunity to share that with others. So thanks everyone for attending. I really appreciate you making the time.
Thanks, team. Have a
See you
great
guys. Bye.